And joining me now to discuss all of this and more, radio legend Ray Hadley. Ray, great to see you again.
Don't feel alone in the Prime Minister's non-performance on Sky. He used to mock me at question time about my interrogation of Peter Dutton every Thursday. Dutton had been appearing on my radio show for probably a decade, and even when he became opposition leader, away from being a minister, he appeared every Thursday. I suspect I made, via my producers, 100 requests for Anthony Albanese to come on the program and face some tough questions. He never, ever, ever, he's got a heart about the size of a caraway seed. He never, ever, ever presented himself. I'm looking forward to Peter Dutton being with Paul Murray tonight, because he's a genuine, decent person. And all this rubbish, and God bless Latika. God bless Latika.
The only one.
I ran into her at the debate at Wentworth, and she reminded me of our past history when, you know, we both worked in the same place, and she has come many, many kilometres since in terms of her professionalism, and the way she put it to them, I'm very proud of her. And I'm proud of you too. I'm proud of brave young women who are prepared to stand up to these people who don't answer the questions. But one of the things I think, as we lead into the election on Saturday, with many millions having already voted, I just don't understand. Peter's been at more petrol bowsers than, you know, an interstate truck driver. But that 25 cents reduction in excise, it will mean the world. It's fuel, it's diesel. The only fuel it doesn't include is aviation fuel. It's a really important thing. And the other thing he's announced recently, you may be aware that there'll be a tax on July 1, an Anthony Albanese tax on motor vehicles, particularly the trucks that are driven by the tradies, and there are millions of them out there. One of them's a Ford Ranger. Now, from July 2, if you want to buy yourself a Ford Ranger, it's going to cost you $14,400 more. If you want to buy a RAV4, which is not a tradie truck, it's going to cost you about $4 grand more, about $3,800. If Peter Dutton's Prime Minister, that won't be happening.
Do you think families understand this? Do you think people are paying attention enough, or the message has got through to them?
No, because the left-wing media are a disgrace. I mean, I don't need anyone to tip to me how those two young ladies from the ABC and Channel 7 are going to vote on Saturday if they haven't already. They won't be voting for Peter Dutton come what may.
Right, but it's not even about how they personally vote. It's that the work they would then produce, or journalists like them, in the Herald, in the Guardian and other, you know, you can understand why you read articles that are so negative when those are the journalists asking the questions.
You see, I've been accused, and I'm happy to carry the, you know, the epitaph of being a right-wing shock jock. That's what I was. I was a commentator. I was not a reporter. I'm like you. I'm a commentator, like Paul Murray, like Peter Credlin, like Andrew Bolt. I'm a commentator. And what my program was based on for nearly 30 years was my opinion, my firmly held opinion. Those people are journalists. They don't have an opinion. If they do, they've got to hide it. They must hide that opinion from view. They must be objective, not subjective. And what we saw in that excerpt tonight.
What would their bosses think watching the press conferences every day?
I mean, maybe their bosses feel the same way about that. But at the end of the day, if you're a journalist, and I've never been a journalist, and I mean, I'm not saying that boastfully, I've always been a commentator.
Well, when I was a political journalist and I was political editor for the Daily Telegraph and before that political reporter for the Sunday Telegraph, I didn't even vote. I wasn't even on the electoral roll for about 15 years because I did take it so seriously.
Yeah, well, look, there needs to be examination, and you know.
But you know, you can't blame the media ultimately. You know, he is facing hostile questions, but you can't blame the media. And there has been a lot that the Liberal campaign could have done better, stronger attack ads.
You know, if I'd have
announcing their policies earlier.
If I'd have been formulating it, I would have started with The Voice. 360 million. What's named up against a wall by the Prime Minister. All he had to do was divide the question. The first question was, should there be Indigenous recognition of the Constitution? Yes, there should be. Then The Voice. We had the NIAA, the Coalition of Peaks, costing billions of dollars. We didn't need another body, so all he had to do was couch it in that way, two separate questions, and the first one would have been carried. And now we won't get a crack at recognising Indigenous people for another 5 Prime Ministers. And that's a disgrace. And that's all down to Anthony Albanese, his pig-headed attitude. And just on the journalists, in relation to this, I know what you say is true, that there have been mistakes made by the Liberal Party and the mistakes that should have been rectified way back 5 weeks ago. But at the end of the day, the message getting out to the masses is coming from people with a set agenda. ask the really difficult questions of Peter Dutton. The Dorothy Dixes, as we used to call them, go to the Prime Minister. That's what happens.
That is exactly what we've seen. Now, I want to speak to you about capital gains tax, unrealised capital gains tax. Now, this should be a coalition scare campaign. I mean, a lot of voters don't know about this. This is very concerning.
People who've retired, I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Partially. But people who've
I'm doing my best to stop you from retiring, Ray.
People who've retired have got to realise this unrealised capital gains, it's not on your shares or your property portfolio that you sell. And when I say property portfolio, most retirees try to have some sort of investment property to keep the income coming in, or shares. You're going to have to pay tax, according to Anthony Albanese, when they increase in value. Not when you realise the asset, when you sell it and you're paying capital gains or other things. These are things you'll pay on the way through. Now, it's a $3 million limit. Now, you know, people say, well, that's a lot of money to have in super, $3 million. If the Greens are in coalition, which I think they would have to be for him to be Prime Minister, they want it down to $2 million. Now, aspirational retirees over the age of 65, or in my case 70, who've worked their backsides off for 45 or 50 years as I have, well, it's not a large amount of money to make sure that you aren't an imposition on the taxpayer, that you are self-funded and you're looking after yourself. That's the way most Australians want to live. They want to live in a way that they're not a burden on their family or on the taxpayer. And all of a sudden, the Prime Minister in coalition with the Greens is going to jam it to these people. 1.8 million Australians. And those 1.8 million Australians need to realise that. If they haven't voted already, they need to realise if they're a retiree, there's only one party to vote for, and it's not the Labor Party nor the Greens.